Hundreds of thousands of Russians protested shouting against the war, and they fled Russia by plane and car. Update: Russia and Ukraine war. No war. Russian protesters dragging screaming from Moscow rally, video. The man was detained by 4 police officers in Moscow after protesting Mr. Putin's announcement of partial dispatch. Protesters chanted, "No war," as they were dragged along a busy street in Moscow. On Wednesday, President Putin ordered Moscow's first wartime mobilization since World War II, with plans to immediately begin enlisting some 300,000 troops to fight on the front lines. Putin made an unreasonable request, when ordering the Russian people to enlist in the army with a sufficient number of 300,000 people to go to the battlefield. As long as they were men, they had to go to the battlefield, not necessarily soldiers. He undertook the invasion of Ukraine, which began in February and left nearly hundreds of thousands of Russians dead and wounded, displaced millions, and reduced towns to ruins, because of an eastern conflict. West identifies Russia's mobilization as possibly the riskiest domestic political move of Putin's 2 decades in power, and in the following months the Kremlin promises it won't do it, and comes at a time when Russia is facing a series of defeats on the battlefield. Fear of conscription quickly sold out flights out of Russia, and jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny called for mass protests against the movement. The independent protest monitoring group OVD-Info said, many large-scale demonstrations were organized in many Russian cities to protest against the war of aggression created by Putin. Nearly 1,400 people in 38 Russian cities were detained during the protests on Wednesday night. It is known that the majority of protesters were people who had fled Russia to avoid the war, but they were unable to escape because they were blocked by Putin at the borders. Dramatic scenes as hundreds of thousands of ordinary Russians fled their country to go against the latest demands of Russian dictator Putin have gone viral on social media. Traffic jams can be seen miles ahead at the Russia-Georgia border as people flee to avoid Putin's request for 300,000 reservists to join the war in Ukraine. Airfares in Russia have tripled overnight as Russian citizens try to escape Putin's demands by any means possible. It is known that airfares were sold out right after Putin's enlistment order. That's why Russians had to cross the border by car.